Welcome back to the Stick 'em Up podcast. Brundi, we are just a few days away from the trade deadline, and we've already started to see a lot of the trades coming in. We've seen some of the names that we had on our trade board already are starting to disappear. Not any of the big ones, I think, that we had kind of pegged yet, but a couple of them that are relatively big, and one big one that we kind of wrote off is getting moved.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Like we said last week, by the time we got around to the beginning of this week here, more and more deals were going to start to roll through slowly, and that is exactly what we've seen here. That's where we're at, and we know that the trades are definitely not finished. We'll be getting a bunch all throughout the week, and then obviously the majority of them will be on the deadline day. Do you want to just kick it off and go through the three big trades that we had over the weekend?
Yeah, I think we might as well start with one of the bigger ones, and you know what? Let's start with the Colorado Rangers. Let's start with this one. So the Colorado Avalanche, the meat of it is Ryan Lindgren and Jimmy VC going from the Rangers to the Avs. If you have the specifics, we can lay those out as well.
Yeah. So Ryan Lindgren, 50% retained, along with Jimmy VC, going to Colorado in exchange for Juuso Parssinen, forward, Calvin DeHaan, defenseman, along with a 2025 second round pick and a 2025 fourth round pick. And I believe those are both conditional picks. It's basically the Rangers just get the better of the two picks. Because Colorado has 2 second rounders and 2 fourth rounders, so Rangers will just get the better of those picks there.
Yeah, and honestly, it's kind of strange looking at everyone's reactions to these, because for the most part, I've seen a lot of people saying either the Rangers won this trade or it's kind of a lose-lose. It seems to be a bit of a consensus, but I don't think this is horrendous for the Avalanche. I think Jimmy VC adds a little bit of forward depth. He's not the guy that they were having the VC sweepstakes for once upon a time, but he's still a pretty good NHLer, and they definitely need forward depth.
He's a decent fourth liner, and that's what Colorado needs. Is they just need depth players.
Yeah, and Ryan Lindgren, a lot of people are saying he's kind of washed and stuff, but he's 27. It's not like he's aging out, and getting him at 50% retained is pretty nice. He's only got 1 year left, so he's a rental unless they want to extend him, so they're not tied down to anything. Getting a guy like him who will sack the body constantly. He blocks a million shots a game. He's exactly what they want, especially going into the playoffs.
Yeah, very similar to another player that we're going to talk about who was traded, the bigger defenseman that was traded over the weekend. Ryan Lindgren gets a lot of unnecessary hate. You look back to since he's become a full-time player in the league with the Rangers, he's a plus 16, plus 20, plus 18, plus 29, plus 22. He's only a plus 1 this year, but everybody on the Rangers is struggling. And through 54 games, he's put up a career high in points. He's got 19 points. So, you can say, oh, his defensive game's not good. Okay, well, no one on the Rangers is playing a good defensive game. If you're saying Ryan Lindgren's bad, well, okay, they're all bad. So,
yeah.
So for Colorado, to get him at 50% retained, you're losing Calvin DeHaan, but you're getting Ryan Lindgren. You don't need him. You're losing Parssinen. You don't need him because you're replacing with Jimmy VC. You're giving up a second round pick. A fourth rounder, I doubt is going to turn into anything. So you're giving up a second rounder, and that second rounder you got from Carolina in the Mikko Rantanen deal. So now you're just looking at it that you trade away Mikko Rantanen, and you're ending up with Martin Necas, Jack Drury, Ryan Lindgren, and Jimmy VC. It's not bad. It looks better considering how good Martin Necas is playing, and people are already jumping on the bandwagon because it's cool to say, "Oh, Colorado's now fleeced this deal." Colorado didn't fleece Carolina, but the deal is looking much better for them. And I
Yeah.
think Ryan Lindgren's going to be in a better position because he's not going to have to be necessarily relied on to be, a big time player, right? Like you look at how nice Josh Manson slid in there because he was having to play big minutes and be a, a generational shutdown guy, if you want to call him that, in Anaheim. Whereas he goes to Colorado and he can just, you know, quietly play his game and has excelled at it. So I'm curious to see. I imagine Ryan Lindgren's just a rental. I don't think he's a long term fit for them, but he makes them better for the rest of the season and their inevitable playoff run. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, for the Rangers, you're selling like okay, yeah.
Yeah. They
I
needed
don't
to
love
move
it
out
for the
some
Rangers.
cap.
I don't hate it for the Rangers. It's mid for them. Like it's
Yeah. It I do think that if they can get a deal done for a decent term at the right price, they might want to keep Lindgren depending on how well he does the rest of the year. Because he's only 27. Like if he plays well with them and he's a good shutdown guy, and if he's not going to be commanding an 8-year deal or something, and as long as it's a reasonable cap hit, like you know you don't see a lot of those second pairing guys that are decent, but not game breaking, and especially the more defensive ones. You don't see a lot of those guys get long term deals, but you
I
know
think
what?
there'd be interest from Colorado side to maybe resign him. But if for Ryan Lindgren, I mean, you are 27 right now. This is your chance to maybe get a longer term deal if possible. And I think the biggest thing is, yeah, you'd be on a winning team like Colorado. You've got a chance at a cup basically every year. But do you want to commit your entire prime to basically to being a third pair guy, a third pair penalty kill guy? Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I don't know for sure, but I
You
think
don't
the
think he'd be
bigger
second
defense.
pairing for them?
I don't think he would be over Sam Girard. No.
It's interesting because it's kind of hard to tell what if they're planning on in the future what they want to do with that decor, because obviously that top pair, Taves, Makar, that's locked down. Gerard Manson, they got 3 and 2 years left, respectively, but who knows after that? Josh Manson's 33. Then again, I can't imagine Lindgren's wanting to plan for that far in advance, but
Hmm. Well, and
you
Josh
know,
Manson is right-handed, so he sits on the right side.
right. Lindgren's a lefty, is he?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does, but you know what? That's that a lot of teams need guys like Lindgren specifically as a playoff rental.
Yeah.
Like just shore up the deep. Like that's exactly the kind of guy that I was talking about last episode when I was saying I think maybe the Leafs could use an extra good shutdown guy that's just in the top 6 defense and just a reliable hand.
Hmm.
But
I think the Leafs are
it's a
still
fine deal.
sniffing around Luke Shen, trying to reunite with him.
I think so.
Um, for Colorado, I mean, I'm giving them an A because you went out and you filled the holes you need, and you really didn't have to give up much. So, and for the Rangers, I mean, a C. I, it's just one of those deals that is kind of weird. Like I fully expect them to probably flip that second because I mean, if you're shipping out Jacob True, but open up money. You lock down Shesterkin. You go out and you get JT Miller. Like your plan isn't to miss the playoffs and sell. You're still going for the playoffs. So right now, I'm giving them a C, but I'm very curious to see what they do with that pick because again, I fully expect them to flip that into some other player to um, bolster up their team a bit to uh, go on a run, and you didn't have the money to sign Lindgren, so you did have to kind of move on from him. In my opinion, bit of an underwhelming return, but
Yeah. Yeah, personally, like, yeah, I give the Avs a B plus. I give the Rangers like a B minus. Like it's decent for both. It makes sense why both did it. It's not a massive needle mover on either side, but I definitely like it a bit more for the Avs.
yeah. Let's move on to the next deal from the weekend. The Minnesota Wild acquiring Gustav Nyquist from the Nashville Predators. Nyquist coming in at 50% retained in exchange for a 2026 second rounder.
Yeah,
this
it's
good
like
deal for both sides, really.
it. I mean, it is definitely at this point, but like, man, it's too bad. And obviously, especially looking at what they did in the offseason, it makes sense why the Preds didn't move on from Nyquist last year. But
Yeah.
it's too bad they couldn't capitalize on his value last year, because 75 points in 81 games, that would have got you a lot more than just a second rounder if you moved him in the offseason. But
Yeah.
this year, he's a minus 20. He's got 21 points in 57 games. So his production fell off quite a large amount from last year, but also the entire Nashville team has. So it's, yeah, like, I don't know if you could really get much more than a second for him right now.
Yeah, I
Especially
think a
especially at
second is.
35.
Yeah,
He's
I think
getting
a
up there.
second was the max you could get. I mean, this was pretty easy, like, because there's not much going. It's an A for both teams. I mean, Minnesota, you needed to bring another forward into the mix, especially with how just injured and beaten up your forward core is, and bringing in a veteran who can produce offensively, can still hold his own in the defensive zone. Like, that's exactly what you needed. And for Nashville, I mean, yeah, you would have hoped to maybe get more from, but the reality is his numbers are very underwhelming this year, as is basically everybody on the Predators. And the reason I like it for Nashville is it's a 2026 second round pick. So because you've already got so many firsts, stocked up this year, that you were kind of hoping you'd be in a position where you were selling off those firsts to make your team even better for a playoff run. That's not going to happen with their offseason moves and what they went out and did, and the guys that got locked in. Your plan is to obviously go for the playoffs next year, so no point getting an extra second in what's a little bit of a weaker draft this year. A second for next year that you could potentially flip at the deadline next year for a rental or something. So
Yeah.
I like that for Nashville, as opposed to getting a second rounder this year that really isn't going to provide much value for them right now or long term. Whereas this second, might be able to you could get a decent piece for your team next year if you use it wisely.
Yeah, like, it's two teams kind of capitalizing on what they can get at the moment. I would say the Wild probably did a little bit better, just because they got a good player whose value is tanked a little bit right now, but the Preds still cashed in and got a second rounder, and it's hard to be disappointed with that when he's not exactly a core piece to their team. They've only had him for a season and a half, and he's 35, so getting a second back is still pretty good regardless.
Yeah, exactly. And then the final deal that took place on the day, the biggest one of them all. This was a guy that we talked about, and there's rumors of him maybe getting moved, but we weren't sure exactly, what a deal was even going to look like, how it was going to work. But we finally know that it can work, and it did. The Florida Panthers acquiring defenseman Seth Jones along with a 2026 fourth round pick in exchange for goaltender Spencer Knight, along with a 2026 first round pick going to Chicago. And that 2026 is conditional. It can slide to a 2027 if Florida ends up trading their 2026 pick by the deadline.
Yeah. So which side do you want to start with this, I guess? Do you want to talk about the implications for Florida or for Chicago?
Let's start with Florida, as they're the team that's getting the big piece of this deal in Seth Jones. Seth Jones also coming in. The Chicago is retaining $2.5 million on his contract for the remainder of this year and the 5 years following that. So Florida's getting him at $7 million per year. This was exactly what I talked about, like with the Thomas Hertl deal that we talked about last year. How people are like, oh, like they just thought it was so absurd that San Jose would retain with 6 years left. But it's like, yeah, but they got a good return. And look at, we're going to talk about with Chicago. They got a good return, and that's because, yeah, if you eat some salary and it's a bit of a long-term contract, you can get more for it. So Florida is getting Seth Jones at $7 million per year for the remainder of this year and following 5.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't mind that for him. Like, there's a lot of people who say, Seth Jones has been, one of he's right beside Darnell Nurse. People say it's one of the worst defensemen in the league, and it's like that's just blatantly not true.
Couldn't be further from the truth.
It's the fact that they are overpaid for the production they give, and at $7 million compared to what was he making before, 9.5? That's a lot easier to stomach.
Yeah.
I don't mind 6 years of $7 million Seth Jones. The one thing that I haven't seen anybody mention, and they were definitely in a different spot, but if I was Florida, instead of having Seth Jones for 7, I would have rather had Brandon Montour stick around for 7. Because he left in the offseason and he signed for 7.1 for the next 7 years in Seattle. If he's willing to sign 7.1 in Seattle, unless he's from there, which I have no idea, I got to imagine he would have been willing to take a 7x7 in Florida.
I believe Brandon Montour is Canadian. I'm going to look that up while you finish your thought.
But yeah, I think, it probably just would have been better if they were able to, maybe move that Spencer Knight salary out a little bit earlier and make the money work and keep Montour instead of needing to bring in a guy like Seth Jones. But obviously that's, hindsight's 2020. They didn't, and they ended up going for Seth Jones. And as much as I would think they'd be better with Montour over Jones, I still think they're better today than they were 5 days ago.
Brandon Montour is Canadian. Yes, he is from Ontario.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think keeping Montour would have been the right play. I don't necessarily know why they didn't or what the reasonings were, but I'm sure that there was some reason for why it didn't end up getting done.
I assume it was salary cap, but they just weren't completely sure yet on how to make the numbers work, because I don't believe they've had to go into their LTIR money at all yet. They do have $9.5 million on LTIR now because Matthew Tkachuk is on there, but I don't think they've actually gone into that yet. So
yeah, I don't believe so.
Where is Chicago? Let's take a look at Chicago, because I know Spencer Knight is making $4.5 million for the next 2 years. So they were paying a lot to their two goalies.
Yeah.
So they might have been able to keep Montour if they were able to move Spencer Knight in the offseason, but man, they in Chicago, they're paying Spencer Knight 4.5, Peter Mrazek 4.25, and Laurent Brossoit 3.3, all for the next 2 years.
Yeah, which we'll talk about that as I think they're gonna have some decisions to make. For Nashville though, or not Nashville, sorry, Florida, the Panthers. This is a good deal for them.
Yeah,
again, like we'll talk about their turn for Chicago. Yes, it was a fair bit to give up if you're looking at it from that side, but you're getting a great defenseman in Seth Jones, right? He's one of those players that people love to dog on because he's a high-paid defenseman on a bad team. I'll tell you right now, you take a Devon Taves, you take a Morgan Riley, right? You take one of those guys and, okay, throw them on Chicago on the blue line by themselves without like any help and say, go play 25 to 30 minutes a night against the other team's top players. Go out there and be on the top penalty kill against their top units. They won't survive. They'll put up even worse numbers than Seth Jones. Yes, Seth Jones was making a lot on his contract. It didn't look like a great, signing at the time to pay him that much, but he's still a good defenseman, right? It's like how when we talk about Jonathan Huberdeau, He's playing very good this year. He's looking really good both offensively and defensively. It's just the contract that's not good.
Yeah.
And that's no indication of the player. You know what? You can't blame a player for getting offered an absurd amount of money and taking it. No one in the right mind would get that nine and a half for 8 years that Seth Jones did and be like, "Nah, I'm not worth it. Like, let's make it a cool 6 mil or something." Like, no one would do that.
I'm a 7 mil player. Do you want to lower my amount? Like,
Yeah, like if you
very
get
few guys
offered
do that.
money, you take it. And the unfortunate part is Seth Jones got traded to Chicago right as they decided, all right, we're gonna suck now. We're gonna go through a full rebuild here again. We're gonna start shipping out pieces that we already had in place, and we're gonna start from the ground up all over again. What was he supposed to do? Like he was put in an unfair situation. He's still a very good defenseman, and I'm very excited to see him in Florida now, where he doesn't have to be the guy. He can sit back on the second pair and he can take a little bit of the lesser matchups. He can just go out there and quietly do his thing without all the spotlights on him. He can just go out there and be Seth Jones. He can go out there and do what he does, and there's no stress. And I'm very excited to see him in that position because I think I think a lot of people are gonna start to be like, man, we are wrong on him. Like, and
Yeah.
again, people dog on him because of his contract or because it's just trendy, right? As soon as a player, look at Cody Ceci. As soon
Yeah.
as you talk about people like, oh, worst defense in the league, it's like because he's always put in bad situations. Like, what do you want to do? He goes from having to be relied on to be a top pair guy in Edmonton for times to playing with Darnell Nurse to being like, hey, you're out of Edmonton, go to San Jose and be the top defenseman. Go play top pair minutes on the worst team in the league. What is he supposed to do? So I'm very excited for Seth Jones. I think again, 7 mil for Florida is totally fine to be paying him that because I think he's going to be he's going to be worth that 9.5 mil, maybe not 7, all day.
Probably, yeah. The one thing I don't know about for Florida regarding this is that their number one right side defenseman that they just locked up long term in trading for him? Or like is this them
Yeah,
saying that Aaron Ekblad is on the way out?
that's a tough one, right? Because there was rumors that like because again, like it's like we talked about how they need to move the season up a bit because what was it like 3 days or 4 days or something after Florida won the cup? It's like boom, the draft, and then all of a sudden, boom, for agency. Like the GM and all of the scouts, the coach, like all of them, they didn't really have time to party. It was like straight back to work, and there was rumors that Aaron Ekblad maybe might be getting traded out of Florida like immediately after they won the cup. Obviously, that didn't happen. He's still playing there right now, playing great. So I don't know, right? Like right now, he's making 7.5.
What do you think an extension would look like for Ekblad?
He's 29. If he sticks around with Florida, it's probably going to be a 7 or 8 year deal. Probably in that 8 to 8.5 range. Like I don't think it's that much of a raise from what he's making now.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say somewhere in that
And I
area.
think
Like,
if Florida said to Aaron Ekblad, "Hey, we're offering you 7 years, 8.5 per year. We're offering you an 8 by 8." Ekblad takes that all day. He would love to
I
stay
don't
in
see him turning it
Florida.
down.
He
Yeah.
would love to just play out his entire career there if possible. I don't know necessarily how the money's going to work and what their plans are because Verhaeghe's extension kicks in next year. Um, Obviously Seth Jones's money now being brought in. You do have to resign Sam Bennett, which I fully expect them to do. Is like he is a integral part of their team, and he is only 28. It's interesting for Florida. Um,
I
a thing
yeah.
I talked about, I think it was last offseason, is come this upcoming offseason, a thing they might explore in order to kind of keep all these guys is maybe a move on from Sergei Bobrovsky, who is making $10 million. He is 36. He's only got 1 year after this one. You had Spencer Knight coming up, but you don't have Spencer Knight anymore. So I don't fully know what their plans are. I mean, obviously their goal right now is to just go on another run this year, try and go to the Cup final for a third year in a row, and go back to back. Yeah, that's obviously their goal. That's all
Yeah,
they're focused on right now. They're not worrying about the offseason stuff at this moment. They're going to have to eventually, but for Aaron
I
Ekblad, I don't know. That would be devastating for Florida to lose him.
yeah, if I'm Florida, I think, like, again, Seth Jones, I like him at 7. I think I would rather have Aaron Ekblad at 8 or 8.5 over Seth Jones at 7. I think that's pretty comparable value. Ekblad's 1 year younger, but he's also just played with these guys. Like, any of the guys
I
who've been
don't
around
think.
for a long time, he's been there, like, since day 1 on Florida.
Yeah, and I get it. Like, if because I don't know. I haven't heard of any like extension talks between them at all. Like, I don't know if they're happening. I don't know if they're not. Like, there's just been no
Yeah.
reports on it, so we got
Yeah, I've
nothing to
heard
go off
nothing.
of. So yeah, I don't know if bringing in Seth Jones is you're already kind of getting your replacement set in for Ekblad because you know a deal's not going to get done, or
Is
you're
it more of a
bringing in
replacement
Seth
for Montour?
Jones. Exactly right. You're bringing Seth Jones, and then you re-sign Aaron Ekblad, and then boom, your defensive core for the next 6 years, your top 4 is set. You've got Ekblad, Seth Jones, and then Forsling and Mikkola, and you've got them all in their ages range from 28 to 30. They're all in the same um, age range. So I really don't know, but again, looking at it purely for Florida, their goal is obviously to just win a cup this year, or at least go back to the cup finals. So I like this deal for them. You don't need Spencer Knight right now, and you have Bobrovsky. You're giving up a first, but like again, it's fine giving up first if you're going on deep playoff runs and winning cups. Like, those first rounders don't matter. And yeah, I really like it for Florida,
Yeah.
especially. Well, I guess this will be from Chicago side. We'll move over to Chicago. Good return for them considering this was the only option they had.
Yeah,
Seth
it
Jones
really
was
seems like
only
it.
willing to go to Florida or the Dallas Stars. And the Dallas Stars, it sounds like just they weren't interested. They weren't interested in giving up a haul for Seth Jones. They're comfortable going out and finding other pieces. So
Yeah.
considering Chicago only had one team to work with, it's not a bad return.
No, it's not. And I do think I think the way this deal got done is because I think Florida, at this point, they see trading Spencer Knight as a cap dump. They see it as, sweet. They just took a first so that we got Seth Jones, and they took 4.5 mil off the books for us. And on the Chicago side, they're saying, we traded away Seth Jones, but we got a first, and we got a former high, like, one of the most highly touted goaltending prospects of like 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah,
So
he's only 23.
he still definitely has time to turn it around and make a great career out of it. Like, he's he hasn't even played bad even recently. Like, this year alone, he's for the Panthers, he's got 23 games played, a 907 save percentage. Like, that's well above league average.
Mm-hmm. You gotta remember though, he's on a very good Florida team.
He is on a good Florida team, but you know, he's goaltenders often take a little bit longer to develop, and then they often are able to stay kind of relevant in the league a little bit longer, depending on their health. And yeah, he's never really gotten to be a starter. The most he's played in a season is 32 games in the 21-22 season. So we'll see what he can do over there in Chicago. The one thing, just to wrap it up on the Panthers side, that you already mentioned, that I do think is the key to it, is I think that the Panthers should probably move on from Bobrovsky after the playoffs. I don't think they should do it at this deadline, but
No, well, you can't now.
Wait, see what happens for the rest of the year. Maybe win another cup, and you decide, you know what? Screw it, let's go for a three-peat, and we'll keep them around and we'll figure it out. But if they don't, and they go, you know what? He, on this big contract that Bobrovsky's been on that makes him 10 mil a year, he's had a full no move the whole time, and then it turns into a modified no trade in these past 2 years.
I know
And
exactly what's going to happen.
so if they finish their playoff run and then they were to trade him out, somebody would probably give him a decent bit of money or a decent return because, Bobrovsky's been pretty good in the last few years. And
Problem
then
is
that
with the
frees
10
up the
mil,
money.
though. And there's only so many teams that can take him. There's a realistic world where I could see at the end of the season, obviously not at the deadline, where regardless of what Florida does, there's a possibility we could see Sergei Bobrovsky get traded to San Jose. Future considerations. It just clears up that 10 mil for Florida. You have 10 million now opened up. You can do whatever you want. And for San Jose, you get a good goalie in Bobrovsky, and more than anything, you get a Russian goalie who's done it all, Stanley Cup champion, Vezina winner. That's the perfect guy to have in the NHL with Askarov next year.
Yeah.
I would not be shocked in the slightest to see that, especially when, again, San Jose's got to at least get to the cap floor. And you have to find a team that is going to fit that 10 mil in. And it's probably not going to be another contender team.
That's true. I could also
That's
see a
something I
team
could
like,
realistically see happening.
Another team like, the team involved in this trade, Chicago. If there's only, after this season, there's only 1 year left on that deal. I'm sure Chicago's not going to be at the cap. If they retain 5 mil on it and you have to send them a second, and then, a team like the Edmonton Oilers, Bobrovsky for 5 mil? Well, now we're talking. That's a lot better than Stuart Skinner, probably, because he'll be 37 at that point. But, he's
because
he's
the thing is with
expensive, but he doesn't
Chicago
have
now,
time.
the thing
He
with
doesn't have a lot of
Chicago
time.
now is we're looking at their goaltending situation, right? You now have Spencer Knight, who is it? I believe it's tonight. He makes tonight. He makes his Chicago Blackhawks debut against the LA Kings.
Yeah.
So you've got Spencer Knight for 2 years. You've got Peter Mrazek for 2 years. You've got Laurent Brossoit for 2 years, and you still have who's the other goalie in there? Soderblom.
Arvid Soderblom?
Yeah, Soderblom. So you've now got 4 goalies in the mix. The most likely, very realistically, could see Peter Mrazek traded by the deadline.
Teams could buy on him. I can see it.
Yeah, you could get value for him. You've already got your goalies. Chicago doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially like if you're trading for Spencer Knight. Like, the last thing you want to do is be like, we traded for you, kind of being like,
No, I'm saying they retain. They retain on him.
Oh,
they don't
retain.
They don't actually keep him. No, they retain 5 mil for a team like Edmonton, who is looking to rent him.
I don't think they would now, because those retention spots are very valuable, especially around the deadline. And Chicago's now got themselves in a bit of a bind, because I believe, they have no more retention spots this year.
Yeah, this would be
okay. So actually, 2 open up. Mikko Rantanen and Jake McKay both open up. Okay, so actually they could then.
And this would be like a around July 1st deal, in my mind, if they were to do it. So it would be 1 year left once those slots have opened up.
It's possible.
I imagine it would probably have to be Florida would go to multiple of these teams and kind of be the one to broker it themselves, but it would you know what? You might have to pay a little bit to move it out, but if you're moving out 10 mil on the cap, that's pretty nice. There's always some goalies showing up in free agency. We'll see who's available. And then, of course, that would also mean you're able to, for it moving 10 mil out, you can definitely re-sign Aaron Ekblad now.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I don't know if they're going to have Bobrovsky play out this entire contract. He does also have looks like a 16-team no trade list. So who knows if Edmonton's on there or not, or any team that needs a goalie, really.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what they do. For Chicago, though, I mean, you get Spencer Knight, who you're hoping is, your goalie of the future. Again, that's when we talked about kind of comparing Chicago's rebuild and San Jose's, because it kind of started around somewhat the same time. The biggest thing was San Jose had their goal of the future. Chicago didn't. Now Chicago does. You're hoping Spencer Knight can be that guy.
When did San Jose start their rebuild?
So when they actually started their rebuild, probably would have been the 2022-23 season.
Oh, okay.
Is about when they kind of really started. The rebuild, unfortunately, kind of got pushed back because they tried to stay competitive. Everything fell apart. They got the 3rd overall pick, but that pick was already traded away, so they lost out on that. So that kind of pushed them back a bit. But
yeah, just because I did see people talking about when these teams that have been in a rebuild for a long time, and people were saying Chicago's been a rebuild forever, but like they've really only been in a rebuild for like maybe 3 or 4 years. I didn't realize, but like Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane, they both played over 50 games for the Blackhawks as recently as 2022-23.
Yeah, but they weren't.
That kind of blew my mind.
They weren't good during that.
Oh no, they were bad by that point, but they were still trying to be good. They weren't like right now. They're like their owner's happy if they lose games. The GMs are happy if they lose games. They weren't back then.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the
rebuild's kind of on similar timelines for the most part. Yeah. I mean, for Chicago, you get Spencer Knight, who easiest Stanley Cup, champion of all time, literally didn't play a single game for the Florida Panthers and gets ringing his name on the cup. So I think if you can do that, that's an achievement of its own.
Most backups don't play in the playoffs, right?
He didn't play a regular season game. He played no Florida Panthers games that entire season.
You are right. Wow, he didn't.
That was the year he went into the Players Assistance Program, and then just never got in on any NHL action for the Panthers. Did play a handful of games, well, more than a handful, 45 games in the AHL.
Interesting. I definitely would have assumed he had just, he played 21 games in the 22-23 year. This year he's played 23, but yeah, he didn't play any even the regular season for the year they won the cup. I had no idea.
But yeah, so for Chicago, I mean, I really like this for Chicago too. Like this is easily an A+ for them. You move on from Seth Jones and his contract. You're retaining a bit, but who cares? You got your goalie of the future that's going to be there for the next, hopefully, at least 10+ years. You get a 1st rounder next year, which is a very deep draft, and for whatever reason, if Florida finds a way where they trade that pick and you get a 2027, okay, well now you've got a completely unprotected pick in 2027 that you can either use, or if you're contending by then, that can be a trade chip. So that it's a good deal for them too. You got great value back considering there's only one team you could send them to. So yeah, why not, right?
Yeah,
you get good value back and you walk away smiling.
Yeah, like there's a lot of people that are saying, man, $2.5 million for 6 years, that's a lot. You definitely don't want it, but it's not a ton, and it's the cap's going up. It's not the money isn't really an issue. It's the taking up a retention slot. But the other two that they are using right now are both coming up, like you said, this summer. So, as long as they still have those two, like it's not that often that you're using all 3 of them every year. So
yeah, once you're contending, you're hoping not to be using those other two.
Yeah. So it's
like if you're only using up one,
think it's great
when you're contending, it's fine. It's a good deal for both sides. Florida gets a big add to their blue line to go on another cup run this year, and Chicago gets 2 really solid pieces back to further along the rebuild. So A's all around for both teams.
Hard agree.
Moving on, we got a couple of contract extensions. Do you want to hit us with those two?
Yeah. So, I think both of these happened actually today. Washington extended Charlie Lindgren to a 3-year, $3 million per year extension. They are locking in their duo of goalies, and I'm not going to say it's at the level of Ullmark and Swayman, but it's a pretty nice 1-2. Like,
Yeah.
Logan Thompson's been playing unreal this year, and they've got him locked in at 5.75 for 7 more years. And now they've got 4 more years of Charlie Lindgren at $3 million. That's pretty tidy work.
Yeah.
Less than $9 million for those two goalies is very nice.
Yeah. That was. I don't have anything to add on to that. It's great work by them, and we now know for sure that Charlie Lindgren will not be moved at the deadline. He will be staying put.
Yeah. Yeah, because we were wondering if they were to move on or if they were going to rent him out or something, and they're sticking with their guy.
Yep. Rightfully so. Rightfully so.
Yeah. And then the other one is Utah extending Olli Mata to a 3-year, $3.5 million deal. I haven't really paid attention to his production much this year. I don't know if you have, but I'm not sure if I honestly really don't know if this is a good deal or not. It's been so long since I looked at his stats. What do we got here? He's a +7, 14 points in 51 games. So, he's more defensive. He puts up some points where he can. But he's on a team that's not in the playoffs with a +7. Like, doesn't seem bad for sure. So
yeah, I wouldn't say it's bad. I wouldn't say it's good. It's one of those ones where I'm just kind of like,
it's fine.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not an overpay. It's not an underpay. Maybe a little bit of an overpay, but he's also can play on the right side. So it's fine. It's really one of those cases of it's a middling guy who's just kind of been extended for time. The salary isn't really changing. He's making $3 million this year, 3.5 on the deal. So
Yeah, like he plays he's actually he does play a very great defensive game, but he is 30. Utah's obviously trying to become a lot younger. I feel like it would have. It's not a bad contract, but it's one of those things where it's just like I feel like you could have gotten more if you traded him. I feel like you could have just gotten more value back if you traded him, and then who knows, right? You send him to a contender that doesn't have a whole lot of money. Maybe you could have gone back and get him free agency. I know that doesn't happen like ever, but I just feel like there was more value if you traded him and continued your path of just trying to get younger.
yeah.
But again, it's not a bad contract. I can't sit here and say, oh, it's a bad deal, because he does play very, very good defensively on a team that's not that great. Just don't expect him to put up a whole lot of points or anything.
Yeah, and I don't think they're expecting him to, especially with how much Keller's been doing this year.
Yeah, well, we can even say with Utah a couple milestones. So obviously, for those who don't know, like the Coyotes going to Utah. The Coyotes' history in the New York or the Winnipeg Jets. History before that does not transfer to Utah. Utah is basically being treated as an expansion team. Barrett Hayton got a hat trick the other night, which was the first hat trick in franchise history. And Clayton Keller had a 5-point night the other night, which is the most points in a single game. No, 2 different games.
That even better. That's two pretty good showings, like in a short time frame there. So you know what? Good for them. I mean, it'll probably get tied at some point. It's going to be a long time before somebody breaks that record, probably.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking.
Not a lot of 6-point nights going around.
No, definitely not.
Good for them.
Unfortunate for Nick Schmaltz, as he would have held that to the end of time with his 8-point game, but that unfortunately died with the Coyotes.
Although the league does have the rights back to the team, so if another team goes to Arizona, they can retain that.
They can bring it back to life. Yeah.
they can have that history there attached to it.
I wonder if they do just solely from the Coyotes or if they include the old Winnipeg Jets stuff as well. I'd be very curious to see how that goes. I feel like at that point you just have to do only Coyotes.
I would hope so.
Like that's just weird.
I would hope so, but unfortunately, that's just not how they do it. They need to take that off of the Coyotes, and they need to put the freaking old Jets in with the new Jets because, like,
yeah, but you already got the Thrashers in there now. It's all weird the way that they do it.
I can't imagine there's that many Jets fans who would be upset if they lost the counting stats history of the Thrashers and gained the old Jets.
I don't think fans care too much about that stuff, though.
I mean, the average fan, no, but like, I mean, fans like us, like, we're really the only ones who think about it much.
Yeah, we talk about it, but then the damn, like, I don't.
No, I'm not gonna go walking around with a picket sign for it. But
the one thing I'll actually say that I think is dumb, and I don't like teams doing, and it happened the other night, and I saw, I'm like, man, it's just dumb. I don't like it. I think actually we saw, it was only a couple nights ago. The Carolina Hurricanes wearing those Hartford Whaler jerseys. I think it's weird.
You don't like that?
No. It's the same as if the Winnipeg Jets came out and was like, "Hey, we're wearing literally the Atlanta Thrashers jerseys." Like it's just weird. You've ripped a franchise out of a city, and then you're like, "Hey, we're gonna profit off it now, and we're gonna make it our identity." Like, no, you're the Carolina Hurricanes. Be the Carolina Hurricanes. Don't be like, "Oh, look at us, Hartford Whaler night." Give us the Hartford Whalers back instead. And again, it's one of those things where it doesn't matter. I just think it's weird. Like,
I guess I don't know. I think it's kind of fun to bring it back. And
if you wanted to do like a Hurricanes jersey inspired by like Hartford Whaler colors or something, sure. But to like use the logo and everything, I'm just not a fan of stuff like that.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Me personally, again, it's your own. Like at the end of the day, who cares? It's where like I don't ever expect that Utah would wear like Arizona Coyotes jersey because Utah's its own thing now. Like they've completely removed
they've
all
got
that
separate history.
Let's move over to a couple. Well, I guess we don't really, other than those milestones, we only have one other one, and that being that Ilya Sorokin became the 20th goalie in NHL history to record a goalie goal, as we had one over the weekend. Sorokin scoring the 7th goal of the game against the Nashville Predators, but he did not shoot it down the ice into the net. It was a result of an own goal by the Nashville Predators.
Yeah,
your boy.
Yeah, Steven Stamkos.
Not the first time he's done this either.
No, it's not. This is, I believe, the second time that he's went to pass it back to the D-man from the down low on the wall, and pass just kind of beat the defenseman. The defenseman didn't pinch over and just goes the length of the ice into the net. It's so brutal because it was obviously fast enough to get to the net, and it still had a bit of speed when it went in, but like, if the defenseman really recognized what was happening and busted his ass, I think he could have stopped it. He would have had to start skating real fast. Like, I don't think it's his fault by any means that he didn't stop it.
Yeah.
But he was just close enough to it when it went in that it was like, damn, he was starting to really gain on it, and he just kind of had to watch it by that point. It was brutal.
Yeah.
But does that sum up the Predators season?
And I was watching that game, and it was like at the start of the third period, and I was just like, man, like this season just can't get any worse for Stamkos. No points in his last 13 games. He hasn't even been a plus in any of those 13 games, and this happens. I'm like, okay, well, apparently it can get worse for him. But congrats to Ilya Sorokin again, becoming the 20th goalie in NHL history to record a goal. And it's always kind of fun when you see a goalie get a goal, and they didn't even have to shoot it. It was a result of him just making a save. However, the goalie gets a goal. If a goalie gets one, it's always a fun time.
Yeah. Did you hear his quote after the game?
Yeah, I don't know the exact quote.
Yeah, so he was saying they obviously asked him about it after the game, and he
I
was
know what it
grinning.
involves though, because I got fired up on Twitter about it.
Yeah, he had a giant grin, and he was saying, "I just knew that I would score one before Igor." Obviously, talking about Shesterkin, and it's funny because
Boy, did that
Shesterkin.
piss off Rangers fans.
Oh, 100%. Because Shesterkin's like on main, one of the goalies who wants a goalie goal the most. Like, up until legitimately just this year, I've never seen Vasilevsky even attempt for a goalie goal. He's actually tried for it a few times this year, but he's never even thought about it before. Sorokin tries for it a lot. Like
But it's
he
not
wants
even
one.
that. It's not even like that. Like it was the Rangers fans were like, "Oh, you know, we live rent free in your head." It's like, no, it's literally Sorokin and Shesterkin are best friends.
Yeah, they're best
Like
friends. Like
they're best friends and they play on rival teams. Why wouldn't he take
they're both goalies,
a
of
little
course.
dig there? Like Shesterkin was probably the first one to send him a congratulatory text. Like
Oh,
it's not
100%.
Rangers like Rangers fans are so full of themselves. Like he scored a goal and he wants to take a little dig at his best friend. It's all in good
Yeah.
fun. And they
Yeah.
face each other tonight, and I'm sure during warm-ups, they're gonna have a good laugh about it because, again, that's what best friends do. That's
Yeah.
the way the world works.
Yeah. Like
It's not that deep.
they were like they stayed they like spend every like Thanksgiving together, don't they? Isn't that like a thing?
I
They
have no idea. It wouldn't surprise me though. Again, both being in the same area, like
yeah,
they
I
probably
feel
love
okay.
that they play on like rival teams and they're so close to each other.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be so nice cuz
They probably
who's
meet up for beers like once a week.
who's in a more similar situation to them than each other?
Oh,
Like coming over from Russia, they're around the same age. They're both in a New York team playing as the number one goalie. Both teams have put a lot of eggs in the basket of them because they're both so good. Like
yeah, like
it, it makes a ton of
they
sense to me.
probably couldn't have dreamed it up any better when they were growing up.
Yeah.
Like
No, no.
they couldn't have asked for a better, yeah, a better situation to be in.
Yeah. Because even better than if they were on the same team because, obviously both of them very competitive and both of them want to be, you know,
The
the
guy,
guy for their team.
yeah, and they both wouldn't be. Well, Shesterkin definitely wouldn't be making as much money if they were on the same team together.
Yeah, absolutely not. Could you imagine though? Like, we'll give you matching 10 mil a year contracts, 20 mil for our goalies, and we'll just have Sorokin, Shesterkin. Probably be worth it.
Just would be pretty good. Would be interesting to see something like that.
Just
Let's
start them each 41 games a year. They get so much rest. They'll probably both put up like a fucking 930.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, with playing that, and not getting tired as much,
Never a back
not as
to
much
back.
injury risk. Yeah. Let's move from New York. Let's go to New Jersey. Um, last last night, Devils forward Jack Hughes unfortunately went down with another injury. We don't know the severity of it. It sounded like it was pretty severe after the game, but now today it sounds like it's not as severe as they initially thought. We're still unsure on it, but it does sound like this definitely changes up um, New Jersey's game plan leading up to the trade deadline here, as they've been on a little bit of a skid recently. They did get Jacob Markstrom back, which does help. His goaltending is a big thing that they need to be successful. Um, but
Yeah.
I mean, you're only 4 points ahead of Columbus right now. Columbus has 2 games in hand. Detroit is at 66, Ottawa at 64. They can't pass New Jersey in the Metro, but if New Jersey falls to that wild card spot, they can definitely leap over them. Rangers are still at
It's a
64.
close
Boston's
chase.
at 64. Like, there's a lot of teams all bunched up in the mix there. And losing Jack Hughes potentially for the remainder of the regular season is not good for New Jersey. So I
No,
expect this to fully shift up their plan now going into the deadline.
yeah, I could definitely see him going after a Scott Lawton or something, grabbing somebody for a little extra center depth for the next little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully Jack Hughes is fine. Obviously he's had past shoulder injuries. Yeah, I think he had a broken clavicle before. Like he's had some injury issues with the area that got hurt there. So hopefully he's all right. And of course, because Jack Hughes got an interference penalty earlier in the game for a rather similar play, and nothing on the Golden Knights got called there. Sheldon Keefe was pretty pissed. He ended up getting kicked out by the ref. So that, you know, obviously just
See, like
pissed off the bench more.
there's no one that would love to dog on uh, Vegas more than me, but it was just an unfortunate play, really. Like it wasn't a dirty or cheap play. It was
No, it
just
should
one
have
of
been
those accidental ones.
it should have been 2 minutes for interference. It should not have been any more than that. But Eichel
Yeah,
did
I mean, yeah, but at the end of
Eichel did hit him and
at
he
the end of the
went in
day, it
there.
doesn't change. Like, yeah, you could be mad you didn't get a 2 minute mark, but at the end of the day, doesn't change the outcome of the game. The biggest thing is just that Jack Hughes got injured, and you have every right to be angry and pissed off about that. Like, full right, like losing your best player like that. That
Yeah.
devastates any team, any fan base at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, they were the entire the entire game, especially on the Devils side, really changed after that. They were it was one of those games where like at the rest of it they were like we're just going through the motions. None of us are thinking about this game too hard anymore. Like
Yeah.
they were focused on Jack and hoping he was all right. So
Yeah.
hopefully he is, and hopefully he can return before the end of the year and still be an impact player for them because he's been pretty solidly their best player all year.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a huge loss for them. Um
I think we
And
just got
I think I'm just curious to see what New Jersey does now with this money that is obviously gonna open up here, and what they do to fill that void. Before we move on to our final segment, which is the one we talked about last week, I'm going through the NHL agent survey that was done by the Athletic. One more rumored offer out there.
Yeah, this one came out pretty soon before we started recording here, but reportedly Wyatt Johnston has been offered an 8-year extension by the Stars. Uh, Rumors are it's somewhere between 8 and 8.5 mil per year. Uh, this coming right after he had a hat trick of power play goals in a game, I think yesterday. Not sure who it was against, but dude was just
St. Louis.
St. Louis. He was just shooting the lights out. He has been pretty much his entire career since he got called up. Like, if they got him to sign that, that would be such an insane bargain. So,
It's such a Dallas thing if he signs it. Like Dallas keeps getting away with getting all these guys on great contracts. I expect them to get a deal done here at some point. Wyatt Johnson obviously got off to a little bit of a struggling start this year, but a lot of changing circumstances in Dallas going into this year, and he's figured it out again, and he's been just dominating again as we expected him to. If they get him on this deal, it's a great deal for Dallas.
yeah. Yeah. If he signs even on the high end, that 8.5, that's still an absolute bargain. Like, he's scoring like a legitimate all-star, and he's how old is he? Like 22, 23. Like, just absolutely
I
goofy.
don't even think
So,
is he even that old? I think he's only 21. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, 21.
yeah,
Turns 22 in May.
yeah, like that's absolutely insane. He's 21 years old. He's already got 161 NHL points, 77 goals.
Yeah,
Like like that that's absolutely nuts. And 14 goals, 22 points in the playoffs. So if they can lock him in on that, like I don't even think he's scratched the surface of what he can do. He's going to be so good for them. Like
yeah.
if this is rumored and he turns it down, like I don't blame him at all because he could easily ask for 9.5. Like I think
Yeah,
that's
the
still
way
pretty fair.
he's trending, yeah, could definitely
Like
try and fight for a little more for sure.
like you can sign him to an 8-year extension, and that ends when he's 29 or 30. Like, he'll still be in his prime after you've had him for 8 years. Like, that's just so unreal how good he's been at such a young age that he could, yeah, like, and with the cap going up, obviously, like, I wouldn't be incredibly shocked if he had a strong playoff run, uh, in these postseason, if he got double digits. If he got up to 10 mil, like, honestly,
Yeah.
like, it's one of those guys that when you watch, like, he drives the play as well. Like, he's one of those guys where it's like, I don't I don't feel too worried about him falling off and becoming a middle six player. He might be on Dallas because they're so stacked, but
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
it's going to be interesting to see, but again, like this is so typical of Dallas to find an absolute gem late in the first round, and that's what they've done. That's why they've managed to make their team so deep and so competitive. And again, they're going to get him locked in on a great contract one way or another, and it's just fitting for them. And it's going to be great to see Johnston locked in long term with them.
Yeah. But with that being said, I think all we have left is the NHL agent survey.
I believe so. Yeah.
All right. So I've got the results of it here. I assume you still haven't seen any of this, correct?
Yeah, I got no clue. I don't even know what's even on this survey here. Well,
Yeah.
one thing before this, actually, I really want the NHL to adopt the system that the NFL does at the end of every um, season. So basically, what the NFL does is at the end of every season, I don't know if it's all players or just some players from each team, but it's all anonymous, and they rank their team on a bunch of different categories, and then those are made public, and it's basically a way to hold like the GM, the coach, the owner, kind of hold them all accountable. It ranks things on like how do you rank your head coach, your training facilities, your like the treatment of families within the organization, nutrition and whatnot. Like it ranks a whole bunch of different things, and then you can kind of see, with teams like some teams might be like, oh, their training facilities are great, head coach is great, like everything gets an A, but then it's like an F minus for treatment of families, and it's like, and it's just a way of holding owners and GMs accountable, which is
Yeah.
something I would like the NHL to bring in. Is I think that could be very cool to see. Um, you know what teams would be great in, kind of see a little bit more behind the scenes of certain stuff like that. But I'm very curious to
Yeah.
see what the agents here
Yeah. And
think
that's
on whatever the categories are for this one.
yeah. And I imagine that kind of stuff that generates so many clicks and so many views for the NFL, I'm sure. Like
Oh
that's
yeah,
the kind of stuff that sports fans
it gets talked about a
absolutely
lot.
love.
It makes a lot of headlines for sure.
Yeah. And
And it
some
forces teams to
questions,
clean up their act in certain areas and make changes and whatnot too.
yeah. And there's some similar questions to things that you were mentioning there that are on this one that you know, every once in a while they get asked in these athletic uh votings in these polls, uh usually by the players, but it's really interesting to see what a lot of the agents say because obviously, as much as the players deal with guys, I think the agents are dealing a lot more with the owners and maybe potentially the GM, some of those guys that are higher up and more in the business, less removed from the actual hockey part of it.
Yeah.
Um, but with that being said, I have most of them. I think I cut out one or two of them that was like the top one had like 2 votes, and then there was like 20 of them tied with 1 vote. Um,
Okay.
so I don't quite have all of them if, you at home are by chance, looking at the article that I am as well, but, so for this first question, and I'll probably ask you for each question to try and, you know, take a few guesses and guess some of the top ones. For this one, it's got the top 4. The top one has 8 votes. The bottom one has 4 votes, and then there's a couple other teams with 1, and then the rest of the league with 0. So the top 4 very clearly have the most votes. The question is, which is the best run franchise in the league?
Best run franchise. Um,
Yeah. The agents have these 4
but I just
teams
have to
as
guess from
well
like
ahead.
try and guess who's in the top 4,
Yeah.
basically. I mean the first 3 that come to mind, because there's obviously like this is going to be a lot of recency bias taken into account with this. So I'm going to go with Tampa Bay, Vegas, and Florida are my top 3.
You have named 1, 2, and 3. Tampa
Yeah,
has 8 votes. Florida and Vegas both have 5.
I was going to say there's going to be a lot of recency bias with this. For number 4 though, could be a Colorado.
Yeah. This is also just best run franchise in the league. So that's pretty over encompassing. That's very broad. So that's a lot of different areas, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just like the GM or something, but
Well, shit. I mean, fuck, the team we just talked about, Dallas, probably. It's either Dallas or Colorado, I bet.
he goes 4 for 4. It's Dallas.
Yeah.
Dallas
I was
is
gonna
in
say,
4th with 4.
with these, there's definitely gonna be recency bias, and it's just think of like what teams have a lot of success over
Yeah.
recent years, what teams
Yeah.
make a lot of like,
And I think that's
good
the point of it.
business moves. Yeah.
The teams that are doing the best recently are, it's not over the past 10 years, but
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
I found that one really interesting because those 4 teams, like 8, 5, 5, and 4 votes. And then Winnipeg, Minnesota, the Islanders, and Toronto each got 1 vote, and nobody else got any. So it's kind of easy to chalk up the single votes to, maybe guys with good relations with those guys, maybe a bit of homers, maybe they took other stuff into account like Winnipeg, Toronto, Minnesota. I can kind of see all those. Not
Yeah.
totally sure what they mean about the Islanders, but same time the Islanders got
No, they just got a brand new
they got the new arena,
barn.
so
Yeah.
maybe it's something to do with that.
Yeah. That'd be my guess. Friday they would get one.
The next one is, what is the best front office to deal with? So this has a lot more to do with, contacting the president of hockey ops, the GM, the owner if necessary. I don't think they're really dealing with the owner that much. But this one we'll probably go for the top 4 again as well. In this one, there's 2 tied at first with 6 votes, 1 with 4, 1 with 3, and then a couple with 2.
Well, I'm gonna assume along similar levels to the first one, minus 1 team. I imagine Florida, Tampa, and Dallas would be on this. I don't think Vegas would, though. So I'm not going to say Vegas, but those other 3 I think are all somewhere on that list at least.
You are incredibly correct. Tampa Bay is one of the teams tied in first. Dallas is in third. Florida's in fourth. And you mentioned Vegas being lower, and Vegas only got 1 vote. You are right; they fell off.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I've heard a lot of negative stuff said about teams in trying to deal with Vegas. So what did I get?
You got third, fourth, and then you got Tampa Bay, who's tied for first. So you need the other team who's tied for first.
Tied for first.
And this is not a team I would have guessed early on, to be honest. But I'm also not dealing with the front office very much.
Ooh, I have absolutely no idea. Let's just throw something out there. Let's go. I don't know, Nashville.
A fair guess. Did Nashville get any votes? They got 1 vote. The other one tied for first with 6 was Minnesota.
Okay, yeah, I could see that actually.
The agents just they just all in agreement that Minnesota is just a great front office to deal with. I don't know if that speaks to the GM, but that's, man, you love to hear it. Those are the answers that make these interesting. Because if they were all like the first one, where it's pretty, you can kind of guess most of them. it wouldn't be as fun to read, but like the ones like that are really cool, and I
Yeah.
wonder how much that helps with our agents telling guys like, hey, don't don't knock Minnesota just yet. Maybe keep them off your no trade list. Like I wonder if
Yeah.
that ever comes into
Yeah,
play if
maybe.
guys are going to UFA and they're like, at least pick up the phone from them.
Yeah. Nice and easy
Um,
to deal with.
a little bit of a less fun one. Which is the most unstable or poorly run franchise? We'll go with the top 5 here. They have a pretty good spread of votes. 6, 5, 4, 4,
Oh.
and 3.
Um, I mean, again, recency bias, Chicago,
Chicago is tied for 3rd. They have 4 votes.
Ottawa.
Ottawa they got 1 vote.
One vote. Oh, I know who's won because I've read a lot of negative things about them. Carolina. Carolina has to be number one.
Carolina has 3 votes. They are number 5.
Number 5.
They
Oh
are
man, I've read a
they are
lot of bad
the
things about them.
yeah. And I think it continues a good bit for this, but I believe they're the only team on here that
Oh
in recent
fuck,
memory has made the playoffs.
Buffalo. Duh,
Buffalo's
Buffalo's
number
won.
1.
Yeah, Buffalo's won. Duh. Oh, that's
Yeah.
bad by me. That's an L for me to hold. All right. Well, the theme seems to basically be bad teams plus Carolina. So Anaheim.
It pretty much is. Anaheim is in 2nd.
I'm not saying San Jose. I don't care if I get an X and say I'm wrong. I'm not naming them. I think that's a great franchise. That's where players want to go. That's a winning environment. All right. Even though they're the worst team in the league and have only won 1 game or 5 games, sorry, since like the beginning of December. It's a winning franchise, so I'm not going to say it.
Hey, fair enough.
And Detroit might be on there. They've sucked for a while.
They're not in the top 5, but they are the next team outside the top 5. They have 2 votes.
How many do I have? I feel like I know the one that's on there, but I'm not saying it.
Yeah, you have all of them except for San Jose. Yes, they
That's
were
such a
tied for Chicago.
joke. Such a joke. I don't know who wrote that. Whoever voted that, like you're just bad at your job.
But apparently Arizona would have been higher than Buffalo.
Oh yeah.
Apparently
Really? Oof.
they weren't even, they're not even a team, but they still had more people say that they would have voted for them if they were still a team than Buffalo did have answers. Not a single vote for Utah.
Yeah,
So,
I feel like by next year they might get 1 or 2.
I think
You
they're
can't
doing
fucking
a
decide
pretty
on
good
a
job.
name.
Well, I guess
I'd vote on based just solely on that. Just inability to pick a name.
Hey, you know what? If I was living in Utah, I would only complain until I go to a game and have a $3 beer and a $3 hot dog.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true.
That would buy a lot of sway with me personally. This is another one that's fun. So this is very similar. What's the most difficult front office to deal with in the league?
Kill Buffalo.
They didn't even get a single vote.
Wow.
Most difficult to deal with. So not bad. And that definitely is reflected in these votes. I'll look for the top 3. There's a team with 8 and then 2 teams with 4.
Carolina then.
Carolina has 4. They are tied for 2nd.
Ottawa.
Ottawa is not on here. They received 1 vote.
Chicago.
Chicago got 1.
I'm really just kicking teams while they're already down, but like it's the name of the game. The way it's done. Anaheim.
Anaheim is in first with 8.
Holy shit.
I think that's the most
The
votes
fuck's
we've
going on
seen so
there?
far. Apparently, a lot of it. A lot of the agents were saying like, do they have a quote here? Yeah, they say the guys running the front office for the Ducks. It really does feel like you're talking to a lot of 80s hockey guys. A lot of the time, if you go in and don't,
run by, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't have the attitude that they have, it's not uncommon for them to tell you to go fuck yourself. They
Yeah, they play hardball. I respect that though.
six of the 8 answers use the word cranky when describing Anaheim.
Hey, you know what? I
That
respect you. You gotta do, but it does kind of reflect at why the Anaheim's been shit for so long. So maybe that does also play a role in it.
yeah. So you've got 2 of the top 3. The other one, when you really think about it, most difficult front office to deal with, it makes a lot of sense.
Most
Notoriously so hard to deal with.
difficult to deal with. Oh, it's the Islanders.
It is the New York Islanders,
New
Lou
York Islanders.
Lamoriello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense because they're a team where they will like hide stuff, not in like a bad way. They just don't publicly announce things until they're ready to. And
Yeah.
that pisses off a lot of teams. Like for all we know right now, they actually could have um
A Brock
like
Nelson trade.
they could have a Brock Nelson extension already in place. And they won't announce it until right before the deadline. So teams are keep like trying to get him, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we signed to an extension. And then teams are like, well, fuck, now what do we do? So yeah, actually that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense that they're up there. Classic
Matt,
Lou.
how funny would it be?
Classic Lou.
How funny would it be if he traded Brock Nelson to a team and he just like signed him to like a 3-year, 10 million extension and didn't tell the other team? And it's just like honestly,
Well, then
like
you're forfeiting draft picks. Look at
I don't.
Ottawa.
As long as you tell them about the details once the trade's gone through, I don't know if they would. Like
No,
honestly,
you can't do that and then trade a player and not disclose that beforehand. There's no way you could do that.
hey, you disclose it as the deal's happening.
No, because what's to stop? Yeah, you can't do that. No way, not possible.
I would love to see what would happen if they did that
The league
because
would either the league would probably just say, well, then the trade is voided. Deadline's passed. You're retaining Nelson. Because at that point,
maybe.
then like you can't tell Brock Nelson, hey, you just signed this nice big juicy extension.
Oh no, you can't.
and
You can't get rid of the
we're
contract.
ripping it away. It'd be like, all right, Islanders, you're
But
not you're keeping Brock Nelson, and he's got this extension that you've claimed.
maybe it's on the other team to do their due diligence and know what the contract situation is, and not just not
No,
just
come on,
trust that Twitter
no,
knows when there's an extension.
no, no, no. Because what would be to stop Tampa from being like, hey, Florida, we'll give you Gage Zongalis or whatever for a 7th round pick. Florida's like, sure, and then Tampa's like, oh, joke's on you, 14 mil for the next 8 years. Like,
Right? It would kind of be hilarious to see a team at least try it. Like teams don't even do offer sheets when it's a good idea for
but
them
that's
because they don't
bold
want
for
to
a team to
upset
try
people.
that because then it's like,
So they're not going to do it. Nobody will
no,
ever do it. They would never
and the
even
league
attempt.
wouldn't allow it.
But
Well, the league would allow it, but then they'd be like, the trade is just voided. Now you're paying that guy whatever extension you gave him.
yeah.
Anyways, let's move on to the next
Yeah. So
whatever the next one is.
this one's a top 4. There's 3 people tied in second and 1 at the top. Who is the best owner in the league? I will bring up because it's got them listed by name. So if you do know names, go for it. But if you just want to say teams, if you know much about their owners, then I can let you know if that's the correct guy.
Well, I know Bill Foley is the owner of the Golden Knights.
And he
So I'll
is
throw
on
him
there.
in there.
He is.
And
He is one
then
of the 3 tied for second.
whoever Tampa Bay's owner is, I don't know who their owner is.
That is Jeff Vinnick. He is in first with 7 votes.
I'll throw Florida out there.
Florida's owner is on there. Vinny Viola,
Can I do one
and
more?
yeah, one more. Oh, this is not a person actually. This is a group, if that helps you.
Ooh, okay.
It had the acronym for them, and I was very confused as why I'm supposed to know this person's acronym.
Oh, um,
They make
oh, I
they make a
can't remember
lot of
the.
money.
Yeah, I can't remember the acronym, but Toronto. But I can't
Yeah,
remember
it is Toronto. The Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, something like that. But
MLSE.
yeah,
Yeah,
MLS.
yeah, yeah, and that
It
one
is.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
All of those
Maple
make
Leaf Sports
sense.
and Entertainment. Yeah. So
Yeah, those all make sense.
yeah.
Just
But who is
franchises that are good, doing good, and making lots of money.
the worst owner in the league?
Um, can't do Ottawa now, so I'm gonna go back to Carolina.
Carolina is their owner is Tom Dundon, and he had 10 votes at the
Yeah,
most for worst owner in the league.
I would say Carolina's. You get a good honest product, but like behind the scenes, there's a lot of dislike towards how they run the show there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
They did not get love in
Buffalo.
this.
Buffalo would be
Buffalo
one.
is second. As
Yeah.
long as I know the guy correctly. I believe that is Terry Pegula. Does it say here? Yes, he's the owner of the Sabres. Yeah. And he had 5 votes. So 15 votes between those two, and then the next guys are tied at 2. So it's a steep fall off there. Um for this
Vancouver has to. Vancouver has to be.
yeah, the
Probably just the
Aquilinis,
remaining votes.
yeah, they have 2, and then one other one has 2 votes as well.
Oh,
And I've never heard this name.
I'll probably just throw out Chicago because why not?
Um no, it is Henry Samueli. Samueli. He is the owner of the Anaheim Ducks.
Oh, okay, well that makes sense. Anaheim's been in there in a lot of the bad rankings, so makes sense that they stick around.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah,
Carolina, Buffalo, and Anaheim, like get your shit together.
yeah. It's crazy how bad Buffalo's been for so long, and Carolina, a great team, right, for the last several years, got double the votes. Like that,
Yeah,
people do not like how he runs stuff. And it sounds like a lot of the agents said that it's because he's very absent, and then randomly he'll show up and he wants to be a part of everything. They were very colorful with it because they all did this anonymously, right? And they were saying
yeah,
how like you just won't hear from him, you won't be able to contact him at all, and they don't really need to. But all of a sudden, he'll show up and be like over the GM's shoulder, like telling him like, "Yeah, I don't know if we should extend this guy that long," or like he really takes over contract talks, and it's like
yeah,
no, and not to mention they have a history of not wanting to pay guys, which is why it was so interesting they brought in Mikko Rantanen.
yeah.
But moving on from that, this one is where they start to get into a little bit of different questions than what we've been doing. What should Connor McDavid make on his next contract?
Like how much per year?
So this one is this one is pretty tough to guess. So I guess we might just want to talk through this one because it's basically just listed as whatever answer they gave. So there's a lot of them with low votes. Um, but they each of these got 2 votes at 15 a year, 15 mil a year, 15 to 17 million a year, 18 million, 20 million, and then with 9 votes, way at the top is just 20% of the cap. So a large part of the agents, a lot of them seem to agree that McDavid should just be making whatever the maximum amount is that he's allowed to make as a player.
I mean, I don't really have too much to say on this. At the end of the day, it's literally just you ask McDavid, what's it going to
What?
take? Whatever he says, you do it. Like that's
Yeah.
what it comes down to. There's no negotiating. It's you give him whatever he wants. He damn near almost dragged a lifeless corpse of that team to win a cup in it by the end of the playoffs there. He's the best player in the world. Like whatever he wants, you give it to him. You don't even risk negotiating. It's just you want 8 years? All right, how much money? Oh, you want that much? All right, done deal. Like that's that's as simple as it is.
Yeah, like that franchise, I don't know what the Oilers are valued at, but if I had to guess, I bet they're worth probably legitimately $500 million more right now than they would be if they never got McDavid. He's probably given that franchise a valuation of at least $500 million. Like the amount of jerseys they sell and just people giving a shit. Like, dude, they were bad for a long time. They made a rule about getting first overall picks because they got so many because they were so bad for so long. So,
and the thing is, right, is like
him getting his fair share.
The way things are trending, there's a very realistic chance Edmonton goes out round 1 or round 2. If that's the case, maybe McDavid's willing to take a little bit of a discount. Maybe he's willing to only take 14.5, a little more than Draisaitl or something to allow the team to put more piece and be competitive. So I don't think you go in there and you give him an insulting offer by offering him too low. You don't go in there and give him an offer that's more than he would have wanted. He just takes it. You just say, what do you want? What's it going to take? What number makes you happy where you'll stick here? Do you want more money for yourself? Do you want us to have more money to give to the team? It's his call. It's his team. He runs the show there. Yeah. So you let him do it. Fuck. He went out and handpicked your coach last season when you fired Jay Woodcroft. Like
he's gonna and he's probably gonna be the president of hockey when he retires. Like he is the Oilers, and when he goes into a talk extension, he should have two things in front of him. He should have a printout of the Edmonton Oilers cap wages page, and he should have a contract where the money part is blank and there's a spot where he can sign it. Yeah. And give him a pen and you just say, I'll be back in half an hour. And you do whatever you want.
Yeah. That's exactly how it should be done. So in terms of what should he make, whatever he wants. It's that simple.
Fair market value says 20% of the cap, which is the most you're allowed to pay one player. And I think arguably still probably
he would
I don't think I don't think so.
Cut more than anything.
But I think he'd be worth that, if not underpaid still.
Yeah, he would definitely be worth it, but McDavid's one of those guys where he just wants to win a cup. You could see it clear as day at the Four Nations. The Stanley Cup is what he's after.
And a lot of people don't know this. I didn't know until recently, until I actually searched it up because I saw this, but he took a discount on his last deal as well.
Yeah.
They had a contract set out and they were going to sign it and announce it a couple days after they finished negotiating. And he called him back at like 8 p.m. that night and he knocked off a few million per year. So they were going to give him at least north of 13 million back when he signed his current deal. And he said, knock it down a bit so we can be more competitive. Like he might just re-sign another 8 by 12.5. I wouldn't be surprised. He wants to win.
Very, very realistic.
He's already got a lot of money. He's going to make a lot on this one, and he wants to win something fierce, man.
Yeah. But that will wrap up everything for this episode. If you want to know what the rest of our schedule for this week is going to look like, maybe we get an earlier episode on Thursday, might be a regular one on Friday, might be a later one on Saturday with the trade deadline. You never know, really just depends on how the trades are moving, what the news around the league looks like, and where we're at with that. But if you want to stay up to date on when the episodes will be coming out, all the latest news around the league, and our initial just blunt reactions to trades, you can do so by coming over to any of our socials. The links are down in the description. For every episode across all platforms, feel free to click the link, come over, talk hockey, keep up to date with what's going on with us and around the league. Braden, as always, final thoughts.
Oh, what pretty soon here, it's actually a couple minutes ago, the Panthers Lightning game started. So I'm gonna go watch that, and I'll let you know in the next episode how Seth Jones looks in a Florida Panthers jersey. It's a Battle
Great
of Florida
stuff.
tonight.
Can't wait to hear about how Seth Jones is going to look with Florida. It's good night of hockey. We got Battle of Florida. We got the Battle of the New York teams. And I received a text that apparently Brady Tkachuk and Tom Wilson dropped the gloves not too long ago. So I'm excited to go watch the highlights from that. But as always, once again, hope you guys all enjoy the craziness around the league as we lead up to the trade deadline. That is it. That is all. And we'll see you guys out on the ice at some point later this week.